This is not an official Garden Club announcement, but it is 1 week until Election Day. If you have not voted, please vote. It is a very important thing to do, so please vote. I don't care who you vote for. I mean, I do, but I want you to vote. So I do care who you vote for, but I'm not going to tell you because it's not my job to do that. All right. So if you want, we can go ahead and start recording. All right. Welcome, everybody. We are here for Horticulture Corner, Mad for Mushrooms. Who's mad for mushrooms? Me too, great. All right, well, my name is Denise Reagan. I'm the Executive Director of the Garden Club of Jacksonville. I'm so pleased to be here. And with my fellow staff members here, we have Morgan Pinks, who's running the Zoom board tonight. So happy to have her. She's pretty new on the job, so she is taking it all in stride. And then we have at the bar, Alex Romero, our facilities maintenance manager. So we've got the whole gang on board today. So we're so excited. And we're excited to have all of you here as well. I'm also very excited to thank the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund for their generous grant that makes hybrid programs like this possible. They give us a great grant. The last couple of years, we've gotten programming grants from them, and it's really made a huge difference in the kind of programming and the amount of programming that we can offer. And so this expanded version of Horticulture Corner is part of that. So we're very grateful to them. I would also be remiss if I didn't tell you that today we launched our matching campaign. So the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund, once again, has decided to give us a match for every donation we get between now, November 1st, and November 30th. So if you give $30, we'll get $60. That's a pretty good deal, right? And that money goes toward funding the kinds of programs that we do like this. So we put on lots of low cost or no cost programming year round, several a month, frankly. And so we really need that support to make that possible. So if you've got $5, $10, whatever you can, we would really appreciate it if you wanted to send some of that our way in November. Again, that's a matching campaign and it's online only. And the link is going in the Zoom chat. And we can also share it with you here. It's GardenClubJax/grow. Because that's what we want to do. We want to grow. It's also a great way to become a member. So you can become a member by going to our by going to GardenClubJax.org/grow, and you can join as a member and donate that way. All right. I would like to thank our two co-chairs of the horticulture programs, Mika Hardison and Susan Painter, who put together a great series of programs this year. I think this is the 6th one. I can't remember. They're running out. I'm losing my count of them, but there'll be many more of those to come, including next month. We have Nicholas Freeman of Waka Palatka. That's fun to say, right? And he is a native landscaper. He does brilliant work. He's done work in the 2 native parks in the Riverside area. And he will tell you about ways that you can incorporate native plants in your yard. That is December 6th. And today we've been accepting plants at the horticulture show at the Jacksonville Fair downtown. So I was at the fairgrounds all morning and beautiful plants were coming in. It's going to be a great show. And we want to invite you to come out and check it out. So November 3rd through the 13th is the Jacksonville Fair. Several of the volunteers who are going to be volunteering at the fair to be at our booth are going to be there. So come check us out. The fair is a really fun thing. And who knew you can see plants? Oh, and one of the fun things you can do is you can vote for your favorite plant for the audience favorite award. How cool is that? So you have a little skin in the game if you get to actually pick one of the winners, right? All right, I already talked about membership as part of the matching campaign. And now I would like to introduce our speaker. Tim Armstrong runs Eat Your Yard Jax, a family farm specializing in edible landscape and garden plants, practicing organic principles and sustainable agriculture. The farm uses composting, vermiculture, rainwater reclamation, aquaponics, chicken production for a manure source, and mushroom production from waste wood reclamation as part of its sustainable practices. Armstrong grew up on Jacksonville's west side and worked in several nurseries as a young man. He returned to the nursery business in 2007. After he met the folks at Beaches Green Market, he expanded the edible component of his business And that's what you see, edible, Eat Your Yard Jax today. If you have questions for Tim, if you're in Zoom, please put them in the chat. We would really appreciate that so we can post them to him here in person. And if you're in the room, we're going to go around with a microphone. So raise your hand if you have a question and we will make it to you so that we can capture your question on the recording. All right, without much ado, I'd like to welcome Tim Armstrong. Let's give him a hand. You gotta turn it on, the button. There you go.
There we go. Is that too loud? All right, good deal. Thanks so much for having me. Whew, wow, that's all right. It's always good to be here. I've enjoyed speaking at the Garden Club on numerous events. Usually I'm in that building over there, so it's nice to do the big stage. I've done it a couple of times, but it's always nice to be here. We're speaking on one of my favorite subjects today, mushrooms, and I like to think of myself as a fungi, so so here we are. She gave you a little bit of background, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but I will touch just briefly on it because I see a lot of new faces here, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad to see new faces. I was in the horticulture business as a young man. I worked at Mathis Nursery, if anybody knows Miss Mathis, who was on behind Paxton High School. It was on my way home from school, and I was able to stop by and befriend them and mow their aisleways and mix soils and stuff. And that was a lot of fun. So I actually worked for several nurseries as a young man. Couldn't figure out how to make a living off of it. So I ended up in industry and put 20 years in with the steel workers. So go figure, I don't know. But after I finished that gig and promised myself I'd never punch another time clock, I ended up doing several things, but I fell back into the nursery business. I bought a nursery, a route sales nursery from a dead guy. And his family wanted the land that the nursery was on, but had no interest at all in the nursery. And I bought Fruit Cove Cactus and Foliage and operated that business as a route sales business. Sold a lot of aces in the area, did a lot of stuff with event planners and wedding planners and that kind of thing. I've just recently spun that business off a year or two ago and put the capital of that business into my farm where Eat Your Yard Jax occupies. So that a little bit of the background. In 2011, I was at one of the agricultural shows in South Florida, and I heard a gentleman speak, Will Allen. Will Allen is one of the commercial agriculture gurus of our time. Helped Michelle Obama with the White House garden. He's spoken all over the world. He won a MacArthur grant, $500,000 worth of work for work with inner city kids in Chicago and Milwaukee area. And he was very inspiring. At that time, I had just enrolled my son in North Florida School of Special Education. And they have a little garden out back that was donated by the Insetta family to the school. And as a parent at that school, you have to donate a little bit of time. So my time was always spent in the garden with the kids. And I just couldn't believe how much the kids just really got a lot of joy out of working in the garden. And so when I heard what Will was doing with the inner city kids in Chicago and Milwaukee, it just clicked with me with the kids at the school. I was like, well, why couldn't we start an agribusiness like that at the school? So I made a presentation to the board of directors of the school, and myself and my aquaculture partner, Bob Watson, made the presentation, and we ended up starting Very Good Farms for North Florida School of Special Education, which continues to this day and has actually become a flagship of the school. Out of that little micro business, started their hypotherapy program, which the Weavers have gotten involved in a big way, and they have all sorts of horse therapy things for the kids. The Bark and Biscuits program was a spin-off of that. So it's been a real joy and pleasure to see what that little seed grew into. So a couple years ago, I spun that project off to the younger folks at the school, and I devoted all my time to Eat Your Yard Jax, which I was running simultaneously. And so it's been a pleasure to really put all my eggs in one basket and all my energy and efforts in one basket. Eat Your Yard Jax occupies my 40-acre farm and on the west side of Jacksonville, just off the 295 loop, right behind UPS, if you guys know where UPS is. We've been there since about 2011. And I have been open to the public for about the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Previous to that, I was always a farmer's market guy. So people give me a hard time. Oh, you're only open 2 days a week. And I give them a hard time back. Well, that's 100% more than I was before because I only used to do Saturday market. So now I'm like 100% more. So I feel like I'm doing a lot. So anyway, we're open every Friday and Saturday, 10 to 4. Come see us. We have blueberries, blackberries, elderberries, goji berries, peaches, pears, figs, pomegranates, olives, and hundreds of other things that you just wouldn't believe would grow in North Florida. So that's what we're all about. That's our gig. So that's where that comes from. But this is one of my favorite classes. I do teach classes like this. We're not going to do the whole class today because otherwise I'd have to charge each one of you $50. But we're going to give you a little taste, and we're going to definitely let you come away with some nice knowledge and hopefully stimulate you to come out to the farm and maybe sign up for one of our programs. I still am on the staff at UNF. I teach night school up there. I haven't taught any lately because I've been so busy with the farm. As part of my retirement plan, I have decided to turn the farm into a nonprofit. And so about a year and a half ago, I started the process, and $15,000 later, after multiple consultants and lawyers and councilmen and all sorts of stuff, we are a pretty strong nonprofit. And so I'm real pleased with that. And I'm excited to know that what I've attempted to create will carry on way after I'm gone. And so I'm real pleased with that. I have 3 boys, and part of the impetus for me starting the farm was, 1, I love plants, but 2, it gave me an opportunity to let the boys learn about hard work and where plants come from and that kind of thing. And I enjoyed doing educational things. And so a big part of our commitment going forward in our mission statement is the educational component. So we do lots of homeschool groups. I have a homeschool group that meets every Monday at my farm and does a big nature class. We do public school groups come in. I've had, we're heavily involved with Slow Food USA. I was the 2014 international representative at the Turin, Italy conference, and I did Yupon Holly as my presentation. So we do a lot of educational things, but this is one of my favorite classes. So fungi.
Tim, I just want to make sure. So if you want to do slides, or we can just turn the slides off so they can see you full screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so just let me know what you want.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a heads up.
Okay, so
So
if we get a full
that was
screen.
the end of the commercial part of it. So now we're gonna get right into the right into the slide. So we'll talk about the first slide as soon as Ben, as you open that little can of worms. This is the entrance to my farm. So I mentioned I have a 40-acre farm. When you come off the hard road, this is the road you go down. I've actually had people call me on the road and go, I'm not sure I'm in the right place. There's a scary road going into the woods. And I go, yeah, we're back here. But if you're, if you're worried about coming back, maybe you're not in the right place. So that's our big joke. So we enjoy it. We enjoy being nestled in 1,000 acres of nothingness in the middle of Jacksonville. So that's kind of hard to do. The Water Management District owns 700 acres behind me, and it's the beginnings of Trout River, which is near and dear to me because that's where the zoo is, and that's where my brother lives, and that's where all my crab traps are, and that's where I'd probably be shrimping if I wasn't here tonight because I'm looking at the ones that are coming out of the river right now, and they're like that big. Yeah, to go see this Chinese guy at the end. Um, so let's talk a little bit about fungi. So okay, so there's my commitment, and there's my impetus of turning the farm into a nonprofit, teaching kids about, you know, soil, building soil, what earthworms and all that good stuff. So how do I flip through 'em? You want to show me? Okay, I just index for 'em. Teaching them some of the benefits of worm castings and why you would want to raise worms. Worms are one of the things that we sell at our farm. This is me at our little healing garden. Even though I'm not like a licensed herbalist or anything, I know a little bit more than the average bear about that kind of thing. Does anybody remember Linda Cunningham? We just lost her this past year. So she was like a super dear friend of mine and like my herbal guru, you know. So I've lost a little hole in my heart right there. So, but anyway, I was at most of Linda's events. She's always come across to a lot of people as kind of a gruff lady, but she was like always super sweet to me. And me and her did a lot of things together. So this is my little healing garden. This is my youngest son, James, back when he was still cute and liked to hang out with dad. This is actually at the North Florida school, and we're picking peas. I had a pea sheller, and you see some okra in the background. This is my farm manager, Amanda, and she's holding one of my favorites. Anybody recognize this fungi? It's a little hard to tell, but I heard somebody say lion's mane. Yeah. So this is another one that I see somebody brought in today. And as you go down the fence line going to the river, if you'll look along that fence line, there's about 10 clumps of it popping along the fence line.
We left this here just for you.
Yes, I could tell. I could tell. So this is the ringless honey mushroom, and it is an edible mushroom. It is a mushroom that you see a lot this time of year. It pops up in huge clusters in people's yard. One of the identifying factors, besides it being the wonderful honey color that it gets its name, is that it emanates from a central spot, and it's a type of a mushroom that always grows on rotting wood. So like an old root from a tree, that's probably what's going on in the parking lot out here. An old root from a tree that is rotting underground, it's going to feed off that tree. Even though it's an edible mushroom, it's not what I consider a gourmet mushroom. It's not one of my go-to mushrooms. I do know a lot of people that really get excited about them. I'm not one of them. What I do get excited about with them is that they are probably my favorite mushroom for pickled mushrooms. And I know you're thinking, what? Mushrooms, pickles? That doesn't even sound right. But you catch them when they're real small like this, maybe even a little smaller. And then you cut them off and you pickle them, and they're wonderful as like a little appetizer on you have a piece of paper I can borrow? Well, I'll put it on this. I'll put it on this. I'm just worried about dirtying your thing. That's all. Here, I'm going to put it on the back of my poster. We're cool. We're cool. Because I have other things in my basket too. So ringless honey is, so with mushrooms, they're like with a lot of other plants, like your hibiscus and your roses and all your other wonderful flowers. There'll be a season, right? There's be a season that it like is in its prime bloom, because that's what this is. This is the bloom. This is the flower of the organism. The organism is the mycelium. The organism is the fungi, and it never leaves its home, really. And what you see, for lack of a better word, might be its sexual appendage or its flower. You know, that might be a nicer term, right? Its flower so that it can procreate. So it'll drop spores out of the bottom of the mushroom, and that's, am I too loud? And that's actually how you identify mushrooms too. So you, just like we have fingerprints, all mushrooms have spore prints that are unique to that mushroom. So if you're wondering how to properly identify mushrooms, you lay it on either a white or a dark piece of paper, depending on the particular mushroom. And when it drops its spores, that fingerprint is what you can use as a positive identifying factor. There is a Florida Mycological Lab that you can use as reference. There's some excellent books on mushrooms. One of my favorites is James Kimbrough's book. This is a University of Florida Press book. It's not about edible mushrooms, but it is about common Florida mushrooms. You can buy this on Amazon used for about 10 bucks, maybe less. And it is a really good book, has color pictures of mushrooms and stuff in it. And even though it's not an edible mushroom book, it does denote mushrooms that are edible. So it'll talk about the edibility in the book. So this is a good one for you to use as a reference book. And then, of course, the god of mushrooms, right? Paul Stallings. He's the man. So he has a couple of great identifying mushroom books and cultivation mushroom books. So I'm certainly not a mycologist. I'm just a grow guy who likes mushrooms. But this guy is a mycologist. He travels the world looking for rare fungi to repeat in his lab. He has a business called Fungi Perfecti. He was a University of California professor for years and still on the staff at Berkeley. He has done a tremendous amount of work on medicinal mushrooms, and he has some books on medicinal mushrooms. He has some movies out of trying to think of the one that's on Netflix right now. There's one on Fantastic Fungi, thanks, on Netflix right now. Definitely worth looking at. He wrote a book called Mycelium Running, all about how mycelium can heal the world's ills. And so that's definitely one to look at. So when I'm doing my mushroom classes, the way I always like to start the class out is with a disclaimer that I'm not a mycologist. I'm just a guy that actually I kind of stumbled into it through the back door. When I bought my farm, it was totally woods. So no road, no infrastructure, no power, no water. And so in clearing the land to put my greenhouses and stuff like that, I knocked down a bunch of trees. And just like the next guy, I'm thinking, well, I feel bad about all these trees, So I was selling firewood and doing everything I could think of with trees. Then I found out you can grow mushrooms on trees. I'm going, score, this is a made in heaven. I love mushrooms. So I bought me some spores and I inoculated some logs. And about 6 months later, I got around to looking at the logs and they were all cracked and gnarled. And I was like, wow, what a waste of time that was. So I threw them out in the field and forgot about them. And then a few months later, it was kind of a rainy day. I was going out to feed the chickens and I just happened to glance over the field. There's my logs and they're just blooming like crazy over there. So I'm thinking, maybe I shouldn't give up on this. The more you do to neglect them, the happier they are. So yeah, this could be a match made in heaven. So I continued working with fungi at Growing Power. Growing Power has his commercial urban agriculture program set up into modules. It's a 5-month program that I went through with Will, and he has it set up in modules: soil building, chicken raising, beekeeping, aquaculture, vermiculture, mushroom production. So I took the mushroom production module there. The only one you can't skip is soil. It's all about the soil. That's his mantra. It's all about the soil. So if you come to my farm, it's all about the soil. He dug that in. So I did some formal training with Will Allen. I also took University of Florida's mushroom program in Live Oak. They have a Live Oak research facility and they offer various classes there. Mushroom production is one of them. So when you take my class, you get a little blend of all my trainings and my practical experience. And then Trad and Olga Cotter in South Carolina have an entity called Mushroom Mountain. and they are one of the best mushroom houses east of the Mississippi. Most of the spore that we use at my farm come from west of the Mississippi, up in the Pacific West coast is where the majority of entities that produce mushrooms and sell mushroom spore come from. So I use field and forest products a lot because I have a long time relationship with them, and I get catalogs from them for my classes. And I think their spore breadth is nice because they have such a wide variety. So in other words, on Fungi Perfecti's catalog, they have shiitake spawn too. But in Field and Forest's catalog, they might have 15 different varieties of shiitake spawn. So that's the difference, is that they really strive themselves into like dialing down on each one of those mushrooms and have multiple little variations. You know, it's just like a tomato. I mean, they're all tomatoes, but there must be a gajillion varieties, you know. So same thing with mushrooms. So Field and Forest. Field and Forest. I think I have one of their catalogs here somewhere. I'll look around for it. So this is one that you'll see often in the woods. Oh, my computer went dead.
I went to you because you were showing things and I didn't want to.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. So go back.
Well, meanwhile, I'll dig through my
There we go.
little box here. So another one that you'll see in the woods a lot is turkey tail. Turkey tail has a couple of lookalikes, and it's a medicinal mushroom. So turkey tail is typically a mushroom that you'll use to make a tincture out of. You know, you'll introduce it to some sort of alcohol, like wood alcohol or vodka, and you'll extract the goodness from the mushroom. So the two mushrooms that I might use personally for that are turkey tail and reishi, and both are corky kind of mushrooms, and both are bracket kind of mushrooms. Bracket means it's like growing right on the bark of the tree, as you see in this little left-hand corner on my screen. Yeah, that corner. So turkey tail is one that you'll often see. This is chicken of the woods. So I'm going to have these available for you to look at, but this is some local chicken of the woods that we picked recently. So as opposed to some other corky look-alike mushrooms, the chicken of the woods actually is you know, fairly soft. And when you cook it, it has the texture of chicken, and that's where it gets its name, chicken of the woods. It's not that it looks like a chicken. It often is a bright orange color. The one I have here tonight, its orange is already faded. But it often, this is a chicken of the woods on a log that I had found. It's a little close-up view of the chicken of the woods. And then this is me with a big cluster of the chicken of the woods. And I believe I'm in Virginia at this picture by the looks of the trees. And I spend part of my time up on the Chesapeake because I grow oysters, and my oysters are in Virginia. Another of my favorites is lion's mane. So this is a medicinal and choice edible. So we talked about the honey mushroom being edible, but not one of my choice edibles. But lion's mane is definitely one of my choice edibles. It's fun too because it's in that Hericium family, which is a very small family of mushrooms, and everybody in that family is edible. So there's not a lot of lookalikes. And then medicinally speaking, it's a neurogenerative mushroom. So smart mushroom increases your brain function, supports memory and cognitive, useful for treating Alzheimer's, age-related cognitive decline, and more. So there you go. Most mushrooms like to grow on dead trees, but lion's mane is one of the mushrooms that you'll see that has a symbiotic relationship with live trees, and I often see it on live trees. It grows pretty routinely at my farm, and it seems to be a spring and a fall bloomer. So it hasn't really started to bloom much yet at my farm. But I suspect when the weather starts changing, it will start blooming a little bit more. I did wonder, I have a mushroom trail at my farm. So when you come to the farm, oh, I don't see it. I picked a little one and it's in this pile somewhere. So maybe I'll look for it again. I don't want to waste time looking for it right now, but it's probably mixed up all in this. But I picked one about the size of a quarter at my farm today. And they're so cute. Even when they're a little small like that, they look just like this big one you see in the picture. I'll find it here in a minute. There's me. So I like to tell people that lion's mane looks like an old man's white beard. So this is my beard shot. So this is me with some mushrooms that we actually grew on some of the logs at our farm. This is another one of our logs that we inoculated. So with lion's mane, we cultivate those the same way we do shiitake mushrooms. So we use typically either dowels or a sawdust spawn. And if we're using a sawdust or a grain spawn, then we have an inoculation tool, and it looks like a big giant brass syringe. And we dip it in the bag, we drill our holes in our log, and we syringe it in the log, and then we cover it with wax. So that's the way that these have been inoculated. So these are choice edibles. So one of the reasons that I like lion's mane so much is the texture. The texture is meaty and very much like lobster. When you like saute it in butter, it has that, you know, that heavy texture like a lobster does, and it's a really nice mushroom to grow. This is some that I'm cooking up into a mushroom soup. I've sauteed some down, what looks like some thyme and some garlic there. That's a couple of my favorites. So this is another wild mushroom. So far we've touched on mushrooms that can be cultivated, but also grow wild. So this is oyster mushroom. This particular picture is another Virginia picture because I recognize that wood. We have an oyster mushroom that's actually named Floridius in the name of the mushroom. And it is a white oyster mushroom, and I see it a lot. Oyster mushrooms are fun in the fact that it's a pretty big family of mushrooms. And so I don't teach shiitake cultivation and lion's mane cultivation in the summer at all, because you want to use the wood that those mushrooms grow on. You want to get that wood when the energy of the tree is in the core. So in the summertime, the energy is up in the leaves in the canopy, right? So in the fall, though, that diminishes and those leaves fall and the energy actually shrinks into the core of the tree. And that's when you want to harvest your wood for that kind of production, because your wood is going to last longer, and your mushrooms, your fungi, are going to have more to feed on because they're feeding on the starches in the wood. A common question that comes up in my classes, and I get calls all the time with this, oh, I've got this big dead tree in my backyard, and there's stuff that grows on it, and I'm sure it's going to be a great tree to grow mushrooms on. I really want to get started growing mushrooms on that. And I'm like, that's exactly the thing you don't want. So what you want to do is take fresh cut wood and inoculate it with known grade mushrooms, and it's a first come first serve kind of thing. So that way, you know that you've put the inoculation material in that log, and what you're going to get out of it is most likely what you planted in it, because they colonize that log first, and it's going to be harder for competition to overcome that. So getting back at this picture, oyster mushrooms are fun because I do teach oyster mushroom production in the summertime, because there are some varieties of mushrooms that'll grow up to like 90 and 100 degrees. And this pink mushroom is one of the ones. I recently taught a class in Puerto Rico, and the pink and the yellow oyster mushroom is what I brought down there for that class. That was another whole fun story, flying with a suitcase full of mushroom spores. I told my nursery inspector it was the don't ask, don't tell policy. I had my nursery inspection license and everything like right on the spot. They didn't stop me. So this is some oyster mushrooms in one of my aquaculture operations. So we grow oyster mushrooms and several other type of fungi on wheat straw. So does anybody know the difference in like straw and hay? Yeah, straw is just like it implies, like you could suck a straw, like you could drink your drink with it, and hay is just dried grass. So you want to do your mushroom production on straw. For one thing, it takes it longer to rot, and two, it has all those little channels for your mushrooms to travel down and to live in and to occupy. So we use wheat straw. This is a good time of year to find wheat straw because it's not always readily available. And then you need to make sure that you sterilize your straw in some sort of manner. You can either use chemical sterilization by using a lime bath, and they have a really good formula for that in Paul's book, but it's not all that complicated. You can look it up, or you can sterilize it by heat sterilization. If you have access to an autoclave, which few people do, you could autoclave it. That's what the professional mushroom production guys do. So an autoclave is what like the doctor sterilizes his scalpel and all that stuff it's like a steam sterilization thing. But you can also boil the straw for like 15 to 30 minutes, and that will sterilize the straw too. So that's the method that we use at my farm. We use heat sterilization, and this is probably Pohu, which is one of my favorites. This is our native
for your straw,
heat.
like so you use like an autoclave or a pressure.
I use heat. I put it in a big crab bowl pot, and I boil it for 15 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then I pour that off, and you let it completely cool.
Yeah.
And then you do your inoculation. Okay.
Want to see that in person? That looks fun.
Yeah. And so this is our Florida native oyster mushroom. So I'm actually collecting these in the woods right now. I had my eyes on a really nice patch earlier in the week, and I went out there to get some for this meeting before the thing, but they had already gone a little bit too far. I did bring one to show you. It's not the most prime example, but when they start going south, they get not as white, they get yellow. One of the identifying factors of the oyster mushroom, unlike a lot of other mushrooms, is that the veins in the mushroom go all the way back to the beginning of the stem. And so that is a very distinct and identifying factor. And I'm not going to tell you that anything that you hear, I expect you to go out and identify and eat mushrooms, because there are some mushrooms that are very upsetting to our digestive system. And there are a few mushrooms that actually can cut down, shut your kidney function down to the point where you can't make it to the hospital. So it is very important that you properly identify your mushrooms, before you eat any mushroom, wild or cultivated. This is another good example of a oyster mushroom, and this again is at my farm. I can see the farm gate in the background. So now we're on to probably my favorite. I have to admit that I have taught more people to do shiitake, and I have eaten more shiitake than any other mushroom in my world. This is one of my logs at the farm in its happiest state. Here's some getting ready to go to market. I sell the mushroom logs already inoculated for 20 bucks. If you decide not to get adventurous and do your own logs, we typically have them available. This was an unusual year this year. My supply got depleted before my next time, which starts about right now. So I'm cutting logs like right now because the sap is coming down in the trees. And so I'm re-upping my game right now. And you'll be able to get mushrooms. So I can take orders for mushroom logs right now. This is one of my workshops.
Could you tell me a little bit about the mushroom logs? Like, so
Sure.
they're logs where the mushrooms are already growing or they're going to grow?
Pardon?
The mushroom logs, like, so describe what that is like.
Yeah, I will. So, so this is one of the classes where we're actually doing the logs. This is at my farm because that's my front porch. And that's where we do a lot of our classes. And so they're inoculating with the drill you see here. And this is a pretty family friendly kind of a thing. I've had kids do it. I've had old ladies do it. I've had young people do it. I've had all women do it. I did a mushroom workshop for a garden club in Ponte Vedra one time, and it was so funny. They invited me to like a lunch meeting, and I got there. I was all business ready to unload my stuff, and they go, "Oh no, you got to come back and have breakfast mimosas first." And we've got these, you know, I'm going like score. So you can see the little bag in the front corner. So that's the spawn, and the particular spawn that we're using is what's called dowel spawn. So does anybody know anything about dowels? Dowels are the things that you like drill a hole in your leg of your piano and you stick a little piece of wood in there, and it fits in a hole in the next piece and holds everything together. That's a dowel, and that's what they use for mushroom production. So the little dowels are put in an autoclave and they're sterilized, and then they're brought out, and then they take lab grade spawn in the liquid form and they stick it in that bag through a little patch on the side of the bag, and it colonizes that bag. And so when you order spawn from the mushroom house, that's the way it comes. It comes in a bag, it's all inoculated. And then so once you take that fresh log and you inoculate it, the answer to your question is that typically it lasts 3 to 5 years. So generally speaking, it's 1 year per inch of log. So if you have a 4-inch log, you're looking at like 3 to 4 years expectation of life out of that log. And if you're looking at like a 6-inch log, you're looking at maybe up to 6 years out of that log. I actually
How many mushrooms like can you expect over that course of 4 or 6 years?
Well, that's a good question. And that all depends on how happy your log is. You know, it's not like a garden where you can fertilize that log and it's gonna, you know, you're dependent on getting good wood that's cut at the right time of year from the right tree and inoculated with the right amount of spawn. And that's the little, you know, nuances that you'll pick up at the class. But I've had as few as 2 or 3 mushrooms, and I've had as many as 75 mushrooms on one log. So my logs are typically like 3 to 4 feet long, and typically 4 to 6 inches around. And that is kind of an industry standard, and it's been adopted over the years because it's easy to handle. And there's really no other reason because yes. So that's a good question. What wood and what tree? So it's dependent on what type of mushroom that you're growing, of course, because some woods like some mushrooms better than others. My farm is in a hardwood bottom, so we have the luxury of being able to use a lot of hardwood. Most mushrooms like to grow on oak wood, and so we grow a lot of our mushrooms on oak wood, but we use a lot of sweet gum and a lot of maple in our operation too, because they grow in the hardwood bottom as well. Right now, we're inoculating a bunch of sweet gum because we took down a sweet gum patch at the farm where we were extending our parking area. So in the catalog, when you order your spawn, there's a little chart in the catalog that kind of tells you what type of wood for what type of mushroom. Okay, so typically the oyster mushrooms like softer wood, like poplars and sweet gums and maples, which are a little softer than oaks, but they're still pretty hard. In this particular picture, it looks like it's all oak, which is not uncommon for my farm. This is my friend Amanda, and she is one of the physicians at Jax Health and Wellness over in Mandarin. If you guys ever need any alternative medicine, that practice does an excellent job, and she is a regular volunteer at the farm, and she's looks like she's pretty joyous over some shiitakes. So this is a button. Can you guys see the mushroom in this picture? So I call this is the button phase of the shiitake growth. So I encourage folks who buy a log and or inoculate a log to keep an eye out on this button phase. So once you inoculate a log, it typically takes 3 to 6 months for it to fully colonize the log. So once it fully colonizes the log, then you can expect your first bloom. Typically not until then. So typically not until at least 3 months. So if we inoculated, if we did a workshop with me this weekend, I would probably expect that log to bloom in the spring, because that would be the next big weather change event in the mushroom's life in that log, and that would stimulate that bloom. So what I would ask you to look out for in the log is this button phase. And can you see my finger? Oh, you can't see my finger now. That little button phase is where the mushrooms first starts coming out of the log. And it doesn't necessarily have to come out where you inoculated it. It really has nothing to do with that. It's like when you got that shot in your arm for the flu or whatever, you know, it goes all over your body, right? And the same thing with the fungi. It travels down all those little capillaries in the log, and it could come out anywhere it wants. But what I encourage you to do is when you see it starting to become this button phase, to stand the log up at that point. And that way, if you have any mushrooms wanting to pop out on the back side of the log, they won't be stifled by laying on the ground. And I do encourage my growers to grow their mushroom logs on the ground, and or at least some kind of a ground clover mat or something like that. I like the ground contact because it gets some natural moisture from the ground. So that was one of my beefs with taking the University of Florida class, was that they, have you heard this before? Is that they have all their mushrooms in this like teepee house, and they're up on these benches. And so my brain is going, you know, isn't that like a lot of inputs? Like, you know, how do these logs get moisture? And they're like, oh, well, we have a misting system, and it comes on every half an hour. And I'm going like, so you got to have like water, and then you got to keep up with timers and misters, and why don't you just lay them on the ground? That's what nature did for thousands of years, you know? So anyway, don't get me started. So this is the button phase, and then it gets a little bit bigger and starts to actually look more like a mushroom. And then it starts unfolding. You can see the little veil up underneath there unfolding. You know, I gotta love shiitakes, right? Yeah. And then you're hoping for that big giant shiitake. So this is actually on my mushroom trail at the farm. You can see my little apartment in the barn in the background. You can see chicken in the woods, logs. So as you walk around the mushroom trail, there's different stations of gourmet edible mushrooms. And then you can see a little bit about how we grow that particular type of mushroom. So when the mushroom starts to unfold on the end, so when it starts out, it's completely like this. It's in that button phase. And then it starts to unfold and unfold. And when it gets to this point right here, it's at optimum. And then once it gets past that point right there, it starts dropping its spawn. And it's not that it's not as edible, but it's just a little past prime at that point. So you're wanting to catch it just about at this phase where it's still rounded on the edge. And this is shiitake. So this is King Stropharia mushroom, another mushroom that we grow at the farm. Now this is grown in a different technique where we're actually growing on wood chips instead of logs like we have talked about, or straw like we've talked about up to this point. A lot of people will grow these in their garden. So it's sometimes called the garden mushroom. Here's one of the bad mushrooms. We talked about bad mushrooms, right? So this is one of the bad mushrooms. This is Destroying Angel. This is one of the most deadly mushrooms that we have in the North Florida area. So I just wanted to bring that up. A couple of years ago, I got interested in doing a festival for the farm. So I was thinking about how can I get more interest in the farm? And then I heard about a pawpaw festival in Western Maryland. And I'm like all over pawpaws. Does anybody know what pawpaws are? You guys are a bunch of garden people, right? You know what pawpaws are. Pawpaws is North America's largest native fruit. And it's a forgotten fruit. People don't know anything about pawpaws, but the Indians did and the earlier settlers did. It is the size of a mango, and it's native to North America. And this is my friend Michael Judd, and we sell his books at my farm, and I have a few available tonight if anybody's interested. This is one of his cute kids. He's got some cute kids, and he does Pawpaw Festival in Western Maryland and Frederick, Maryland. And I decided to go up and see Michael and his festival, and I kind of modeled my festival after his. And Michael and I have become fast friends over the years. We actually taught together in Puerto Rico in February, just extended that bond a little more. He came and stayed at my farm for a while. And I have helped him in the last 2 years with his festival, get ready for his festival. So this is pawpaw ice cream that we've made at my farm, and these are the pawpaws. And so I kind of modeled my festival after Michael's. Michael had 600 people at his last festival. So this is instead of pawpaws, I chose persimmons because we are on the very, very southern edge of pawpaws. So we can grow some pawpaws here, but has anybody ever seen a prolific pawpaw in Jacksonville? You have? Good. Yeah, because there's very few. Pardon? Oh, good. And where was this? Do you remember?
It was over in Mandarin.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just this one tree, and I was shocked to see
I
it.
love it. Yeah, I want to meet that guy. So there's actually a variety of pawpaw called mango pawpaw, and it originated at the Tipton Research Center in Tipton, Georgia. And so that is the pawpaw that I have really focused on at my farm. So I went to another pawpaw festival in Ohio, the 28th annual festival, and then the biggest one. This is like a 3-day festival.
You're obsessed with the pawpaws.
I am obsessed with the pawpaw. And Yorma Kukorman was playing there. Does anybody know who that is? Like the front man for Hot Tuna and Jefferson Airplane. Anyway, He was there. He has a farm in Southern Ohio. He's like one of my music heroes. And I went and studied music at his farm. He has his own radio station and cafes. Like, man, score. I want to do what that guy does. So he was the musician at the Pawpaw Festival I went to. So two birds with one stone, man. I like it. But when I was thinking through, well, what kind of fruit should I pick as my theme fruit for my farm? So I thought, well, it should be native, right? You know, so I thought, well, along that line, what would be native? What would be at a slow time of year when, you know, my farm's starting to really slow down, you know, so fall was a good time of year. Bug pressure is low. It's a little cooler, so people don't mind getting out. So I chose persimmons because they're native and they're kind of off the radar for a lot of people. A lot of people never even tried persimmons. And a lot of people that have maybe remember them as a kid. They ate something in Granny's backyard and it was just like the most awful thing that they had ever had in their life, you know, because it has an astringency to it if it's not 100% ripe. So it gives you that puckery, you know, like very tasteful taste. But a good ripe pawpaw is like heaven. You know, it's like ambrosia. It's just soft and gushy and sweet. And so we chose pawpaws. And last year we did our first festival. Right. I came back from Michael's festival and I told my staff at the farm, I said, we're going to have a persimmon fest and we're going to do it next month. And this is the date. And they go, well, that's only 28 days from now, Tim. There's no way you can do that in 28 days. There's no way. And I says, yes, we are. We're going to do that. And so I says, we'll limit it to 100 people because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And it's our first festival and we don't have that much time to plan. So we did our first festival. We limited it 100 tickets. We sold out really quick. We had people mad at us at the gate because we wouldn't let them in, but we just had a grand old time. And so this year is the second Pawpaw Festival, Persimmon Festival, yeah. And
just checking.
Yeah. So I've got some
You're
posters.
obsessed with those pawpaws, I'm telling you.
I know. I am obsessed with. So this year we have the opening remarks by Mark Winnie. Does anybody know Mark Winnie? So he wrote a book called Food Town USA, 7 Unlikely Cities That Are Changing the Way We Eat. And one of the unlikely cities was Jacksonville. And so myself and Nathan Ballantyne, the man in overalls, and a couple other wonderful people were included in the book. And Mark's become a grand friend, and he's our opening speaker. He's an environmental think tank participant. He's an author, speaker, and just a wonderful man. We have Josh from the doing backyard organic blueberry production, and he's from the Blueberry Ranch in Yulee. We've got Logan from Pine Ridge Products talking about backyard solar and how to make that practical. We've got Ancient Alchemy Apothecary doing the truth about water, my friend Brantley. We've got Backyard Homesteading by Rachel Stillwell from Stillwell Farms. Got Backyard Bees with the Nassau County Beekeepers Association. Fermentation with Mallory from White Harvest Farms on Moncrief Road. If you haven't been there, another great farm right around the corner from me. We got Healthy Gourmet Mushrooms You Can Grow with Noah from Harmony Mushrooms. This is a little entity in Murray Hill that is a little micro business starting up, and they sell spawn and they do classes. And then we've got organic vegetable production with Brian Lipinski at Down to Earth Farms, one of the regulars at the Riverside Art Market over here. We've got Backyard Turkeys and Chicken from Blueberry Ranch, Jamie. So it's going to be a great festival. As part of the hoopla around the festival, my friend Dennis Chang from Blue Bamboo has offered to do us a pre-festival dinner. So this is coming up Saturday night. Come off that wallet and buy a ticket to our farm to table dinner. Dennis has taken the list that I gave him of all the things that we're producing on the farm right now, and has come up with a 4-course meal that's fit for a king. And I would love to see you guys there. Ticket sales have been a little slow, so it would be a wonderful blessing to see all you guys come out and support local agriculture and what we're doing at our farm. So you can find out more about that on our website. We're at Eat Your Yard Jax on the web. That's our website. That's also our YouTube channel. There's about 30 videos on our YouTube channel. Each video is an educational video about one of my favorite plants. There's a video on sugarcane. There's a video on blueberries. There's a video on pears. There's a video on peaches, and on and on. We are on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on TikTok. So come check us out. It's all at Eat Your Yard Jax. That's the moniker across the board. If you come to our farm, what you'll find is that we grow a lot of the things that you may be familiar with, but then we grow a lot of things that are very unusual, like sustainable greens. I've got a couple of books here that will tell you about some of the crazy things we grow, like Okinawan spinach and Vietnamese spinach and Brazilian spinach and Australian spinach, which gets like 6 feet tall and has leaves like this big. We grow root beer plant, and we grow just all sorts of odd things that you just may not have realized were edible. So we do a little writing, or I do a little writing. And so you'll see my articles sometimes in Edible North Florida Magazine. So if you haven't subscribed to Edible North Florida Magazine, it's a great resource for our area. I've got a couple more slides.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I just want to let you know.
camera, because like people can't see you while you're talking.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go ahead and do the other slides.
Okay.
You come back now that you've already done it. I do a little writing on there. I think 100% follows. I think my last article for them, because was sugarcane, and I used the farm in Gainesville. So this is our farm to table dinner. This is why we do what we do. Teaching little kids about mushrooms and about all sorts of edible plants. Bring your kids to the farm and bring home a cart full of plants. This little girl's got her blueberries and blackberries and stuff. And, you know, this just gives me such joy to see that next generation, because that's what's going to help heal this planet. It's not going to be us. We're going to be, you know, pushing up daisies here in another 10 or 20 years, but it's that next generation that's going to really carry this good food movement to the next level.
1 second, let me get to you.
Uh-huh.
Mushrooms on a log.
You can. I typically don't recommend it, as far as like if you are going to inoculate it with shiitake and lion's mane. I don't recommend that, because I like to be able to go to a log and know what I'm getting. It happens. It happens on its own sometimes. So this is a shiitake log here, and these are already starting to dry up, but still very edible. And this is a technique that's called the slab technique. I'll get that question in just a second. So in the slab technique,
Unfortunately, you're not on camera right now, like,
Oh,
so nobody
that's
can
fine.
see that. So
That's
if you
fine.
could
They're probably
can you
tired of
move
looking at
it
me
over
anyway.
into the camera area?
In the slab technique, you
No one can see it from
how
home
about
either.
now?
So
In the slab technique,
okay.
I'll bring the log
There
over
you
to me.
go. And I'm gonna move.
So in the slab technique, you take a log and you cut it into slabs, just as the name implies, and then you put the inoculation material between each slab, and you make like a mushroom sandwich kind of thing with your spawn. So it's kind of a fun way to grow mushrooms. I've you know, stacked the slabs up 4 or 5 feet tall. So you had a question? Yes, we're open every Friday and Saturday, 10 to 4. You can. You can.
Okay, please let me get to you so we can capture those
So
questions.
she's wanting to know if you can purchase the logs at the farm or order them. Yes, so if they're available, you can purchase them, and if they're not available, you can order them. And as soon as they are available, they'll come in.
Now,
And then
can
you
they-
also can sign up for the workshops, which I think I have one coming up in about a week. I don't actually schedule those. My farm manager does that. She just tells me when to show up and I do the
Do you
the show,
do you just leave the logs in the woods when you have one inoculated?
you
Do you
do.
keep in the shade? Or
Exactly.
where, like, can it
Exactly. You
be?
leave it in the shade somewhere, and typically with ground contact. So I keep one in the flower bed in my front yard, and that's not uncommon. You also can take a flower pot and put your log upright in it like this, and then fill it with play sand. And then the play sand will actually hold some moisture and hold the log upright. So for folks that, might live in a condominium or something of that nature, or if they want to put it in their little patio, it's just another way of growing mushrooms. So you'll see that at my farm. You'll see some techniques where I've done that.
We have another question here.
I have two questions.
Okay,
If you come to the farm to table dinner, could you come out a little earlier and walk around, or do
Sure.
you just, okay?
Sure.
And my second question is, we have all these mushrooms that are growing up from a tree that we had cut down.
mhm.
And my husband seems to think that you have to get rid of them right away, or are they good to just let them grow in the yard?
Well, you're asking the guy that, that teaches mushrooms. So, I mean,
I know, but I
mushrooms in
mean,
my world are a good thing. I never really worried all that much about them. So mushrooms are mycelium, right? So
Right.
mycelium is like super important to plants. So, and to humans. I mean, there's all sorts of mycological activity on your body, without bacterias and fungi, we wouldn't be able to live as humans. So there's a lot of symbiotic relationship between humans, but there's also a lot of symbiotic relationship between plants. So nutrient uptake by the root hairs on the plants are facilitated by the mycological reactions within the soil. So there's some very important functions of that. And so you hear a lot of people, especially the permaculture crowd, talking about using a lot of heavy mulch around their plants. So basically what that is doing, that's encouraging more fungi and mycological activity. So in my view, do you have to get rid of them? Probably not, but your husband might not. Don't stick him on me. So that was both questions that I got both. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions from Zoom that I wanted to give you.
Sure.
One is, do you have to worry about mold attacking your inoculated substrate?
It could, but typically not. I typically do not worry about that. Sometimes you'll see like a black sooty mold on some logs. It's typically a function of airflow, just like with issues of that with plants. If you're having mold on your plants, it's typically an airflow situation.
Okay. I have another question. What time of year do you find chicken of the woods in Northeast Florida?
In my experience, the fall and the spring.
Fall and spring. Wonderful. Does the color change after harvested chicken of the woods?
Yes, particularly once it hits the pan. But
Once it hits the pan, yes.
So from that brilliant orange color to this faded orange color is typically a function of age, not necessarily of when you picked it. So that bright orange one, if I would have harvested at that point and brought it into the kitchen and cut it up, it would have retained that color for, right up to the point of cooking it where it starts to fade a little bit.
Wonderful. Oh, and I see we have I just processed this membership today from Noah Hudson. Hey there, Noah. Thank you for joining the Garden Club of Jacksonville. Can one log grow multiple harvests? I think you sort of covered this, but could you go over that one more time?
Yes. Can one log do multiple harvests? Definitely. Definitely. So over the lifetime of that log, you will expect, I usually say, like 2 to 3 blooms per year per log. And for me and my family and my friends, I typically, and I know this sounds like a big number, I typically like to have about 50 logs for me, but I eat a lot of mushrooms, and I share a lot of, love with my community. And I, you know, I have some on hand to sell. But that's my number. That's my number. 50 is my number.
I'm right there with you. I love them too. If I had the logs, I would do it as well. Again, one more question from Zoom. Since logs have multiple bloom seasons, what about straw substrate beds or grain bags?
Okay, that's a good question. So, the good news with straw is that when I inoculate this straw and I put it in the bag, it's pretty quick. So we said, how long for a shiitake log once we inoculated it? 3 to 6 months. So I'll usually already have a couple of blooms by that time out of my straw, typically. So when I inoculate it, it's usually within a month or two when I get my first bloom. The disadvantage is that you typically only get a couple blooms out of it. You know, you can like eke maybe 2 or 3, you know, maybe a little more, but typically now, given that this one is probably at least 6 months old and it's been sitting out on my mushroom trail. Let's see, there's a tag on it. Okay, well, let's see. This was done in February of 20. So these little silver tags are actually a little tag that I embose upon who I got the spawn from, what variety of mushroom it is, and when I did it. So all the logs that you purchase will have that information on it.
Does that affect the nutritional quality? Is it better to do it in wood versus straw?
That's a good question. I think it does. So discerning chefs think it does. So most of your commercial grown shiitake, like you get at the grocery store, are grown on sawdust blocks in a controlled environment where they're controlling the humidity, they're controlling the light, and they can actually get, you know, they can dial in, you know, when that chef needs it, you know, based on that and force that bag to bloom and stuff. But nothing's like mushrooms grown the way that nature was intended on the log. And, you know, discerning chefs think there's a difference, and I personally think there's a difference. But as a difference from straw and wood, they're two different animals. So typically, like, I wouldn't grow shiitake on straw. I've never actually even heard of it being grown on straw. So certain mushrooms are more in tune to grow certain ways.
So I've grown a couple times with straw and alder chips, and I've gotten trichoderma each time. How do I go around that? What am I doing wrong?
So you're getting turkey tail and you're trying to, is that right?
I think it's that. I mean, it's green.
And you're inoculating with what?
I've done pink and yellow oyster.
Okay.
Both.
And what's your sterilization method?
Water, heat.
Okay.
Pasteurization.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You might want to attend one of my workshops where we go do the deep dive on it. You know, it's kind of like the guy that comes to me and says, you know, every time I plant tomato plants, you know, they get to this point and they never have tomatoes. They bloom, but they fall off. You know, what am I doing wrong? You know, it could, you know, it could be a lot of things. You know? So I'm really not positively how to answer that question.
Feel for you. Any other questions in the audience? One over here. 2 questions.
I'm excited about your persimmon festival.
Oh, thank
and
you.
I just went on your website, and it's Sunday, correct?
It is.
Sunday?
It's this Sunday.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
It's an all-day affair.
So what time does it start?
It starts at 10 o'clock.
Okay, and how late?
So
is
it's 10 to 4, and you can come and go as you please. There's 3 tracks going on all day long. So there's a kids activity tent, and every half an hour a new activity comes out for the kids. We'll be grinding sugar cane, we'll be painting faces, we'll be doing giant bubbles as long as this table, and you know, so every half an hour is a new activity for the kids. And then every half an hour there's a new speaker that comes out in the speaker tent. So while the kids are playing, you can go listen to somebody talk about wonderful things that you can do in Northeast Florida. And then simultaneously, there's a tasting booth where there's free tastings. So it is a paid event. So there's a $20 ticket to get in. But once you get in, then it's free, unless you buy, you know, like food. But the tastings are free. And the drinks are free. So coffee and tea and herbal. We have hibiscus tea, coffee and water is free. Miss Patel with Backyard Buffalo, if you don't know her, she is a gem in our area. She lives in Ponte Vedra and has water buffalo in her backyard. How cool is that? And she's a dear friend, and she brings her food truck. And then we'll probably have an Asian-inspired tilapia chowder, because we are an aquaculture facility, and we usually harvest that resource prior to the event.
Yeah, hi. Back to the mushrooms and the logs.
Okay.
You mentioned like you inoculate a fresh log, because you don't want fighting, for cultivation with any
Right.
other spores. Is that a problem if, say, you do put it in your yard, say, and could it possibly be taken over by non-edible mushroom spores? Is there a way to protect against that sort of thing?
Could the log that you inoculated get, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, would
Mhm.
other spores get in it and then take it over
Um,
instead?
It could, but it's not very common. What is most common is your turkey tail, which is more of a like a surface bracken kind of thing. So the turkey tail doesn't actually travel down the veins of the tree like the shiitake and some of the other ones. Turkey tail actually lives on the outer section of the log. So I see turkey tail on my shiitake logs all the time. Do I do anything about it? Doesn't bother me. So they're just living there on the surface. They're not actually eating the energy of the log, so they don't really bother me. I've personally never had like some other weird mushroom come up on my shiitake logs. And you don't put that many really spores in it. So in a 4-foot log, it's typically 40 to 50 plugs. And this is industry standard. So this is a standard that has come up from commercial guys that are doing this by the gajillions logs. So more spores in it. I've had some participants in workshops like, I'm going to drill 100 holes in this log. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more mushrooms or that you're going to get it sooner. Because, if you got 6 flu shots, it's not going to make you less likely to get flu if you got 1, right? You get inoculated, you get inoculated,
All right, can we have a big hand for Tim Armstrong?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Oh, one other little gem.
What's that?
One other little gem.
One little Jim, go ahead.
Okay, so what do you do with all these mushrooms? So I did want to let you know that the simplest way to dehydrate mushrooms is to put them in a brown lunch bag and stick them in the crisper of your refrigerator, and they naturally dehydrate themselves, and they're hard as a rock, and you just throw them in the soup and they rehydrate. So just a little gem. So all sorts of little gems that you pick up like that at my workshop. We do have some stickers out back. I'll put some cards on the table. I'll be back there where my books and stuff are. I didn't bring plants today. I usually do. But invite me back for another workshop and we'll do plants another day. Okay, guys?
All right, fantastic.
All right.
If you guys could just give me 1 minute, I'm going to give you a couple of party messages. So I really appreciate your patience. All right. And if you are looking to get in touch with Tim, eatyouryardjax.org and eatyouryardjax@gmail.com. And as he mentioned, there's some great events going on there, like mushroom workshops and the Persimmon Festival. I just want to tell you about a couple of things coming up at the Garden Club. If you haven't been to a Budding Gardeners program, you really need to. So come and volunteer or bring your children, grades 1 through 6. On November 12th, we have Sunflower Power. You're going to learn about sunflowers. They're more than just pretty. They're really great. They feed us. They feed us internally and spiritually as well. So that's November 12th, and there's still some spots left for that. We have our next Fun with Flowers program. This is this one is like selling super fast. So if you want to do something really fun for the holidays, it's a make and take. So you come, you learn about some floral arranging. This one is with Kuhn Flowers. Michelle, what's her last name? Shoot. She's one of the owners of Kuhn Flowers. They bought it in like 2006, and she is from England. And so she's going to be talking about some British, elements that she's bringing to her designs. But this is on December 1st. And like I say, we're doing 2 classes, a morning and an evening, and they're selling very fast. So if you want to come, you need to get on that registration list fast. Our next Budding Gardeners program is on December 10th, and it is we're going to teach children how to arrange greenery. And this is really cool because these arrangements are going to go into our flower show. We are holding a flower show this year. And so it's going to be really great. It's called Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. It's going to feature, elements from the past, today, and the future. And there's going to be little things like fascinators and brooches and that sort of thing. So it's be a really fun thing. And all of the children's arrangements are going to be part of it. So it's going to be really fun. So that's December 10th and 11th. And then 11th, that coincides with our Luminaria Festival. And if you've never taken part in Luminaria in the neighborhood, you definitely should. And a great place to do it from is here at the Garden Club. And tuk-tuk tours are going to be starting here and going through. So those tickets are selling fast as well. So if you want to get on a tuk-tuk, go to our website and find out how to get a ticket. We would love you to take a survey about today's program. We're going to send you a link afterward. You can also use your phone to scan this, or if you're at home, you can use your phones to scan that as well. We want to hear your feedback about this program and give us ideas for future ones. I want to thank the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund one more time because we really appreciate their generous gift. And I want to thank all the staff here tonight and all of you for being here because it wouldn't be a great program if we didn't have you here to take part. So thank you so much and have a lovely evening. Thank you.